So I thought I would return to the scene of the crime for the last podcast. I'm back here at the Genesis Theatre, as you can see, for a last wrap-up video for the whole project. In terms of describing how things went on Friday night, we're categorising it, or I am at least anyway, for sure, as having been wildly successful. It was a great night. I thoroughly enjoyed myself, and I think everybody else who was there did as well. We have lots of comments from people who clearly had a good time and were quite surprised by what unfolded. Kathy and Garth were the ones who were tasked or who offered to organise the event, and they did an absolutely fantastic job. They had a lot of stuff to do in terms of getting food and drink and a drinks license and all of that. But we were delighted to find that the Genesis was an absolutely ideal venue for something like this. A nice large theatre. We reckon we had something like 220 or 30 people there. We had very few no-shows, which is always gratifying. And the facility itself was just ideal. The sort of inside and the outside court here behind me were used later on for the whole food and sort of reception thing. And with a night like this, kind of warm and balmy, it was absolutely ideal. And again, on this project, the weather just seems to have been incredibly cooperative. I know when we were back in Europe last year, at one point when we were going over to Belgium, Ross and I took a look at the weather forecast, and it was forecasted to be miserable. As it turned out, yeah, there was some spotty rain here and there, but for the most part, it was fine. And again, on Friday night the forecast was for something like, 60% chance of drizzle or rain or something. Again, that didn't materialize. So guests were able to either stay up in the foyer indoors or spend some time out in this lovely courtyard behind me here. And so, so we were able to sort of, if you like, double the floor space that was available to us. So that was absolutely wonderful. After the film was over, various members of the family and myself took to the stage to sort of say our thanks. Sue, Kathy and Barb all spoke. Unfortunately, Sue and Barb stood a little away from the microphone, so it was a bit more difficult to hear them. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to get something of what they had to say on there.
We are not the only surviving family of Sidney. We have Sidney's sister Mildred, or known as Mim, and her two children are here as well in our audience. Unfortunately, I don't have a way of showing, but our mother's first cousins, Doreen Peltier and Harley Gifford.
And then Stephen Banks, you saw him in the film. His knowledge of World War I is amazing. He's an amazing man with an incredible passion for World War I. He researched his brief time in the service and brought it all together. You saw how he laid it out, and oh my gosh, I was so moved again just seeing it.
From a phone call from a stranger to the premiere of a film, what an adventure this 2.5-year journey has been. Learning the story of Sidney has been so fascinating. It's a unique story of one young Ladner man, but we must remember that similar stories were happening in thousands of towns and villages across Canada. Thus, the fortunes of war has taken an only son from loving parents and a kind friend from many in Delta. Learning about Sidney was only one part of the adventure. Equally as fascinating was watching the process of an idea turn into a film. Cliff pitched his storyline and I was hooked. But then the work began. Finding letters from Sidney, photographs of him, interviews, costumes, working out details of our overseas travels, and so much more. And there are many people who contributed their time and talents to make this a polished narrative. And I'd like to acknowledge some of these people now. Heartfelt thanks to our son, Patrick Cuthbert, who dressed up as befitting Private Rich and signed up for his 1-year term, Patrick's acting debut. Enhancing the movie tremendously with an original score, we thank the composer, Leslie Sutherland, for adding a depth of emotion with such incredible music. But if you were wondering about all the other sounds that bring a film to life, that would be Kevin Hamilton, adding the squawks of birds flying over the not-so-grand Burston Hotel, and the noise of gunfire and war in action. The sound designer put all those auditory elements together. As invited guests, you're here because you received a special invitation designed by John Montague. The posters and logo you see displayed here tonight are John's creation, and having a clock depicting the countdown is brilliant. There's been lovely press coverage by the Delta Optimist, and I'm impressed with the photographer Gord Goebel and the reporter Dave, who actually persuaded Cliff to sit down on the ground outside in the streets of Ladner for a photo shoot. We're delighted to be able to have the premiere of this documentary at Genesis Theatre, Ladner, where Sidney was born and raised. Robert and Alex have been very patient with our questions and showing us through the venue several times. I have such gratitude to Claudette Hayward, who brought Cliff and I together, because it was such a random chance that she was in the right time and the right place to foster that connection, and Claudette has since passed away. Without her, this film might not have been made. And Mary Paul, our mom, was the keeper of Sidney's letters. She probably didn't realize how many of her stories and the things she knew about Sidney triggered searches that led to so many of the aspects of Sidney's life that Cliff was able to find out about. I'm so thankful Cliff and his wife Nikki traveled to Vernon to interview her and film her before she passed away. To each and every one of you here tonight, you're here because you listened to us talk about this project for 2.5 years, and we convinced you it would be worthwhile for you to come and see it tonight. We are very appreciative and thankful you're here tonight.
The other person that we have to give a huge thank you to is Bryce Payton. He very kindly offered to MC the evening and was very professional in the whole thing. He met with Kathy and I on the day before, went over what it was that sort of we wanted him to say and made some notes of his own, and then crafted some opening and closing words.
My name is Bryce Payton, and I was thrilled when invited to be part of this production in a small way, putting together some words spoken at a gathering in Sanctuary Wood, where the team marked and dedicated the spot where Sidney died, as their journey through England, France, and Belgium concluded in a moment of reflection, gratitude, and prayer.
The writing of that was an interesting thing. Last year, when we were hoping to go to Europe, we were putting together a list of people who might possibly join us, and Bryce and his wife were interested in coming along, but as circumstances turned out, they weren't actually able to join us. But in the course of trying to get everything organised, we had an email correspondence, and he and I chatted a bit. And as you tend to do nowadays, when you don't know somebody, I obviously Googled him and found that he had worked for the airline industry. But the thing that jumped off the page at me, though, was the fact that he was very heavily involved with his church in Calgary. So I sent him a note, told him what I had in mind, and asked him not to contact the family directly. I wanted to not surprise them with it, but I didn't want them to be too aware of sort of what I had been thinking about doing in Sanctuary Wood. Bryce said, yeah, he'd love to do that. And within a half a day, fired me back an email with this prayer on it. And he said, you know, feel free to use it, don't use it, amend it, alter it, anything you like. And I read the thing once and I was just, whoa, this is absolutely fantastic. It's exactly what I wanted. So I wound up using it pretty much verbatim. Although I'd practiced ahead of time so that I wouldn't stumble on the day in Sanctuary Wood, you'll hear when you see the film, or if you saw it on Friday night, you'll hear that I have real difficulty getting through the words, because there was just something about being in that place for that reason and using those words that was tremendously powerful. So thanks, Bryce. You did an absolutely fantastic job for us there, and I'm so pleased that you were willing to do that, and also, as I said, to MC on Friday night.
So this concludes our formal part of the evening. As mentioned earlier, the team would be thrilled if you could join them in the lobby for a reception to show their appreciation to you for being part of this evening, and to those who contributed time, talent, and treasure towards the telling of this story. And please remember, if you do drink, please drive responsibly, or as my good friend Jerry McKinnon always said, take the back roads. Thank you.
It went well. We met with somebody from The Optimist the other day, and he said, how do you feel about it? And I said, I'm actually quite happy with it. I think it's gone well, and I'm pleased with it. So, but the proof of the pudding is to show it to an audience. That's what the real trick is. And so,
well, everybody I've spoken to said how good it is.
Yeah, good. Yeah, no, I'm
very professional.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of what we're aiming for, you know. So it's good.
Amazing, eh?
Yeah, I thought so. I was pleased.
Amazing.
Yeah.
My God. When you started out, you had no idea.
No, literally it was just a plaque on the wall. What's this about? How did this happen? The whole, you know, the whole irony of sanctuary wood and death, just, you know.
Amazing. Good for you.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, I guess. Just, you know.
Looking forward to the next one.
Oh God, yeah, right. Yeah, well,
Get to work.
we'll see. I have a few ideas, but I'm not sure just yet. We'll have to do some. Well, the first thing I want to do is to get as much out of this as like not money, but just as much exposure and legs out of this as I possibly can to make it work, and then see if I can. I mean, I want to talk to knowledge, as I said, and.
The other thing about Friday night that was absolutely amazing was the Filmmakers Fund. We had put this basket out in the vague hope of collecting some toonies and fivers to just perhaps put towards meeting any shortfall in the running of the event. As somebody who was checking people in, I was absolutely shocked at the number of tenors and 20s that went in there. Mind you, one person put in $50 and then took out three 20s, so I felt a bit better that the universe was coming back into some kind of balance. The other thing that I want to do now is that to let you know that the reviews are in, and Kathy and I had some lovely letters from various family and friends. So I'll just read a couple of those, just little snippets. I won't tell you who wrote them because I don't want to embarrass anybody, but I will read a few of them. So here we go. A powerful and moving story you told last night, Cliff. Thank you very much. I suppose behind every name on every war memorial and memorial plaque there is a story which for the most part will never be told. Thank you for telling this one. Another one said, thank you for the invite and the showing last night. It was a beautifully constructed doc with the timeline to hold it together. It made for a compelling, if almost threatening experience. Again, our thanks and appreciation. Another comment was, a very powerful and emotional evening for sure. The most powerful part I really felt in my heart was the countdown of that brave soldier's life and the noise and lack of understanding by officers of their poor shell-shocked men. Thank you, Kathy, and your family. And lastly, Cliff, even though I had watched every one of the podcasts, I was not prepared for what I experienced last night. It was such a powerful film. The concept of a countdown is brilliant. The story is so poignant. I have to say I got some pleasure from the fact that a number of people commented to me afterwards that they found the whole countdown thing to be a bit unnerving and unsettling. And I was, as I said, I was quite pleased that that had actually come to pass, because obviously for any storyteller, filmmaker, whatever, the big challenge when people know the outcome, in other words, that Sidney did not make it, the big challenge is to try and generate some kind of interest and some kind of tension perhaps. And obviously I realised on reflection, what had occurred was that at the beginning of the film, you, the audience, don't know him at all. He's just a name on a plaque at a church. But by the end of the film, by the time of his death, you've gotten to know quite a bit about him. So you're quite invested in what happens to him, even though you know that he's not going to make it. So I think the idea of using that countdown was actually very effective. So I'm quite pleased. So look, that's about it, I think. I don't have too much more to add. If you've seen the film, you know that I thanked people for the experience of making it. We're going to show it a few more times. If you didn't get to see it and you live anywhere in the Lower Mainland, you'll have a chance to see it on the 17th of June at All Saints. And we have a couple of other dates in mind after that. And a number of people have said to me, I really have to work very hard to get this thing a much wider audience. So I'll be doing everything in my power to get the Knowledge Network, TV Ontario, Vision, anybody that I can. So again, as I said, thank you so much for your kindness, for your support, for your dedication to the cause, and I will close it off at that, and we'll keep you informed as to how the thing goes from there. So thanks again. Thank you.